One week down, another show here on the No Ceilings NBA Draft Show with the Draft Sickos. I'm your host, Stephen Gillaspie, joined by my co-host, Jam Boozer Hines. Jam, how we feeling?
Fantastic. Another great show lined up. It's going to be a good one.
Yeah, and we got a fun slate for y'all, but let's go ahead and rock, shall we? We are live here on the No Ceilings NBA Draft Show, here on the No Ceilings NBA YouTube channel. We are also on your podcast player of choice. I'm Stephen Gillaspie, joined by my co-host, Jam Hines. Jam, I want people to understand right off the rip how much I love them. Like No Ceilings Universe, I want you to understand how much I love you, because right now I could be watching the Rams playing in the playoffs. I'm here doing my due diligence, laying out a fun lineup of prospects that, Jam, be honest, there's some names that we're going to be discussing today that I feel like really need some more light shed on them. You brought us a few names to the table, as did I. How are you feeling about the slate that we're going to be talking about today?
I love it. As mentioned on Twitter, the potential PG1, we'll get into that, and some guys who really are making a strong case for first round selections. And, if we got to get into the sicko bag, so there'll be the deep sleepers here. So I'm really loving the slate and always have an active chat. We appreciate everybody. We could do this without you. And just shout out to the whole draft community.
Yeah, for sure. Norn Rad in the chat is already talking about one of the guys that's on the slate, that being Alan Graves. Antoine Willis is always coming in here. He's working on a Cameron Boozer and Caleb Wilson piece for his Hawks publication. So, Antoine, share that whenever you drop that, and we'll make sure that we help get some light on that as well. He also wants to know, Jam, have we seen any good movies lately? Have you had time to watch any movies?
Man, we may have to do a show about this at some point, but no, like I'm trying to watch more movies. I am much more of like a TV series type of person. So between that and basketball, then just a ton of wrestling too. I gotta find some time to fit in some more movies. But right now Netflix watching His and Hers, and they're also recently got into Homeland. So I'm getting into that as well too. So any suggestion for movies though, I'm definitely down.
Yeah, and Antoine is asking, where are you from, Jam? I could answer that, but I'll go ahead and let you answer that for yourself.
Yeah, I'm from the DMV. I'm from Northern Virginia.
There we go. And then
Yeah.
Norn Rat says wrestling. I mean, obviously, we like wrestling around here. There's I didn't take a picture, write it down, but there's actually like an independent wrestling event going to be going down, I think, this upcoming weekend for myself here in little old St. Mary's, Georgia. So I'm gonna have to check that out, because I don't know much about a lot of independent wrestling scenes. I've been a connoisseur of like the bigger promotions, obviously like WWF turning into WWE. I was actually team WCW during the Monday Night Wars era. I got into ECW a little bit, TNA a little bit, and obviously AEW in the picture now. But the more local independent stuff, I'm not like super duper familiar with. But I'm Marvel Cinematic Universe type of a guy, so I'm more mainstream.
Yeah, I definitely feel that. We have MCW Maryland Championship Wrestling Independent here. Um, Leo Rush is guys, Velveteen Dream guys that came
Yep.
out of there. So it's a fun little scene that's pretty close here too. And then, like as you mentioned, don't want to get too much wrestling talk on
maybe during the summer or something.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, huge fan of obviously major promotions, but huge New Japan fan for a long time. And I went to AEW's first Dynamite show here in DC, and then also the pay-per-view as well in Baltimore at Full Gear. So that was dope. So being able to follow them, and as you mentioned, TNA, whose show on AMC wasn't the greatest and get the greatest reactions, but I'm looking forward to going back and watching that. So it's a lot
AJ
of
Styles opened up the show, though,
yeah.
Mr. TNA himself.
Certainly did. So a lot of good stuff out there. Always a great time to be a wrestling fan. And to get back into it, it's a lot of different options out there.
For sure, for sure. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to get back to what we're doing here for a living. We're going to pay the bills. We're going to talk about some basketball. And Jam, we opened up last week's show with a little bit of philosophy. I don't even necessarily know if like what I want to open with is counts as philosophy, but some interesting things that I'm finding I want to pull the string on a little bit is that I noticed that the biggest sleepers in this year's class, if we could limit it to a very small list, I'm sure
Hmm.
there's a debate to be had about other names, but I would say Keaton Wagler, I would say Amari Allen, and I would say Ebuka Okorie would be like the bigger sleepers within this class. Jam, would you agree?
Yep. Yep.
Yep. So something interesting about all three of those guys is that they were all Gatorade Player of the Year for their state. Now, some of these guys were not ranked within grassroots, the RCI top 100s or anything like that, with the exception of Amari Allen. Amari Allen was, I believe, 67th RSCI top 100. There's a lot of discord about Keaton Wagler only getting two high major opportunities. Ebuka Okorie, obviously New Hampshire's Gatorade Player of the Year. A little bit of acclaim, but had to go to Stanford to get the type of role that he was after. I started looking at like Gatorade Basketball Player of the Year stuff, Jam, and there's some interesting things as far as like certain states that you wouldn't think would be the best at basketball. Like if I were to ask you, Jam, just real quick off the top, what are some states that you consider to be like basketball powerhouses?
Oh man, I'm going home. Bring the DMV, West Virginia, Maryland, DC, but of course, got to give love to California, Texas, New York, New Jersey, Washington, specifically Seattle.
Well, what if I were to tell you that looking at the past like 10-ish years of Gatorade Players of the Year, Wisconsin has something going on in their water, Jam. I'm just going
They
to list
do.
off some names, okay? Amari Allen was last year's. Prior to him, Konka Nipple might be Rookie of the Year. Milan Momcilovic, who is killing it as a shooter in Iowa State. Seth Trimble, who is like the defensive ace for North Carolina. Brandon Pajemski, Patrick Baldwin, Jalen Johnson, Tyrese Halliburton, Kobe King, and Sam Hauser. Those are the last 10 years Gatorade Player of the Year for Wisconsin.
That's not bad, and like, there's really a lot of talent in Wisconsin, in that area. I spent a year coaching D3 basketball out there in Wisconsin in
Oh,
Madison,
interesting.
Edgewood College there, D3, and the D3 scene there is incredible. Like, the facilities are nice, like it's very competitive. So just the whole scene there from high school, multiple divisions in college, like it's a really wonderful scene there.
For sure. And then you look at some of these other states, like Indiana has some interesting lineage of players of the year, stuff like that. Of course, you got your North Carolina's got a lineage as well.
Yeah.
So my point being with this though, Jam, is like a lot of times, and we've talked about how we make our own big boards and stuff like that. You wanted to bring that kind of philosophy to the table here on one of our past episodes. I always look at rankings from these like typical grassroots publications. ESPN puts out a really good list. 24/7 puts out a really good list. I'm sure I'm missing a couple off the top of my head, but the RSCI top 100
Hmm.
from like the basketball websites. There's a few really good publications. On three, I'm sure has great products as well, which is now Rivals, if I'm not mistaken. But
Yep.
there's a lot of really good publications that will put out these top 100 lists, but sometimes 50 is a shorter list than 100. Jam, I feel like I might just start going through these states miss players of the year for the Gatorade Player of the Year and kind of work that into my scouting process, because some of these guys that have popped up, like I said, weren't even on these are like top 100 lists.
Yeah, no doubt. And shout out to you. Obviously a real sicko. You've already started to put together a nice spreadsheet just tracking all this
Can't help
wonderful
it.
stuff. Yeah. I love it. And I'm curious to see once we kind of, well, I'm putting the onus on you, but I can do a little more of it just to see what your research entails at the end, just kind of the correlation between a lot of these Gatorade State Player of the Years and success at the NBA and college level, to see how it kind of correlates to stars and rankings and all that type of stuff.
Well, I can tell you right now, like these are the Gatorade States Player of the Year, but let me read you the past, 10 years of the National Players of the Year.
Hmm.
So it went Cam Boozer last year, the year before Cooper Flag, the year before that Cam Boozer. So a little bit of tug of war between those guys. Grady Dick, Chet Holmgren, Amani Bates, James Wiseman, R.J. Barrett, Michael Porter Jr., and Jason Tatum. So these National Player of the Year, I would say Jam has probably like a what's that, like an 80% hit rate of at least being a really good rotational player, if not better.
Yeah, not bad at all. And I think that just really ties into what we talked about offline is just the pedigrees of prospects and just kind of that prior resume that they're building. And then just how much we are looking to trust that pedigree, especially when prospects, when we're evaluating them, they reach rough patches or if we're trying to project forward. Maybe they didn't quite figure it out here, but they have the pedigree there. McDonald's All American. They are Nike Hoops Summit selection. They are the Gatorade Player of the Year and those type of things. So I think it's very interesting to see how much and which type of accolades we can trust. A lot of it is, kind of really combined together more times than not. If you are going to be a 4 or 5 star prospect, you are going to be a state player of the year. Obviously wasn't the case with guys like Keaton Wagler, but more times
Yeah.
than not. So I think those are really, really interesting cases to study in the track.
Yeah, for sure. And then at W Pacers BR sent us a little bit of change here. He said here in Brazil, AJ DiBonsa is already a Pacer. Go Pacers. And Jam, I do want to say that I did watch the BYU game over the weekend, and they made it very clear that AJ's name isn't DeBansa, it's DiBonsa. That's the correct pronunciation, is what we're saying. So I'm
Yeah,
gonna
I'm
try to
glad
work
that
that
they
in.
cleared that up. Yeah, absolutely. I'm always a fan when that stuff comes out. If you hear directly from the prospects, from the kids or their parents, circle, whatever the case is. And then once again, I'll always kind of beat the drum on this. Like I love when the prospective team sites have the pronunciations. You can hear it, you can see it. I think that's a huge help to get names right. Names are very important.
Absolutely. All right, so Jam, we're gonna pivot away from that little, I would say, just observation that I've had,
Hmm.
and I want to try to do some work behind that. There's probably a written piece in here somewhere. I'm gonna let it marinate and figure out what I want to do with that. But let's go ahead and transition. We have a very fun slate of players that we're going to be talking about today. Our headliner prospect is not going to be one of the top, I would say, 4 prospects, but maybe he could work his way into being a top 5 prospect within this year's draft class. And he's going to be our headliner prospect. And I just want to share with everybody that our headliner prospect today is brought to you by Tyler Rucker's Graphic Design. And by the way, happy birthday to our conductor of chaos, Tyler Rucker. Today is his birthday. So,
Yeah.
uh,
Happy
yeah,
birthday, Rucker.
happy birthday, my man. All right. So today's headliner prospect brought to you by Tyler Rucker's Graphic Design is Darius Acuff Jr., the freshman guard out of Arkansas, listed at 6'3", 190 pounds. He will be 19 years old on draft night. Jam, on the season, he's averaging almost 20 points per game, almost over 6 assists, 3 rebounds, a steal, about a half a block, 2.2 turnovers per game, 1.8 fouls per game. On the season, he is shooting 49% from the floor, 41% from deep, 81% from the free throw line. In their most recent game against Georgia, the state that I live in, Arkansas lost the game 90-76. Jam, I I'm gonna focus like my conversation, trying to move forward, talking about the more recent stuff. I'll talk big picture too, but
Mhm.
I really want to focus on games a little bit now. But where are you at with Darius Acuff Jr., and what have your thoughts been of him as of late?
Imma flip it back on you just a little bit
Please.
because because not to bury the lead, but I know he's PG-1 for you, so I'm very interested in kinda hearing that case because he's not PG-1 for me. Maybe he could come to that level, but for Michael Brown Jr. is the top of that list for me, but obviously open to hearing the case and wanna hear that case for Darius Acuff.
Yeah, I mean, I could do a full breakdown, but here's something that I wanna mention, okay? In this most recent game against Georgia, he's had his handle was probably the most loose, the loosest, more loosier, whichever one is the proper grammar, layout there, that it's been all season, but he still came away with more assists and turnovers. I believe he had 6 assists to 4 turnovers. Those 4 turnovers are the most that he's had all season long. It's tied a season high, where if you look at some of the other guards that are ahead of him, I think it's underrated, like, how good Acuff is at taking care of the ball. That's the season high for Kingston Flemings. Michael has had a 6 turnover game on the season. Um, Phylon had 5 turnovers, in 2 separate occasions, and so has Christian Anderson. So, if you're looking for an encapsulation of, like, who's the best caretaker of the ball, like, right now, I would say Acuff and Flemings are neck and neck, but it obviously goes beyond the how good of a distributor and caretaker of the ball that he is. I genuinely feel like his athleticism is underrated. Like, when you talk about the flexibility of a Michael, you talk about the strength of a Kingston Flemings. You look at some of these other guys, like the shiftiness of a Phylon, or the length of a Christian Anderson. I genuinely feel like Darius Acuff goes under discussed just because he's so smooth with his movements. There was a play in this game against Georgia where I'm genuinely putting my Arkansas bias to the side. He rose over to dunk over somebody on Georgia, and that should have been called a foul. Like, he rose up to dunk on someone and ended up getting knocked down on his back. Like, that should be a foul. Like, and you should reward the aggressive offensive player, right? I just even
Was
in
this
this
the one in
Georgia.
transition, the one-hand one? Was that the one?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, that
Yeah.
one got me out of my seat, and I love to see that, and as you said, that shoulda got the foul, but even though he didn't convert, it actually went in and out too. I thought he put it down, but you
Yeah.
wanna see that type of aggression.
Yeah, and if you look at everything else that he does, like, no one else on Arkansas had it going, so this was Acuff having to put the team on his back. This is not the I'm a selfish point guard. I'm going to do all the scoring. Nobody else on Arkansas could get it going in this game. Acuff did everything he could to will his team to victory. And still in that game, he was great, dude. As far as there were moments where he attacked mismatches, like taking Santos Surreal out on the perimeter and hitting a three over the top of him. He worked his way into the paint both with and without screens, something I feel like I keep saying with him compared to some of these other guards. He does not require a screen to get to his shot, and I think that cannot be undervalued as a guard. Some slick finishes that he went to with, like, the same hand, same foot layups that he was able to do and extend pass. There were a couple times where he got blocked, but he's being aggressive and he's getting to the paint. Santo is just, for as many headaches as he can cause. Like, when you watch him and you want him to be elite, he is a nasty rim protector, and Acuff went right at him several times, and of course got blocked a couple times. Um, and a lot of that goes from telegraphing layups in concert with the fact that no one else on Arkansas really could get anything going. So when Acuff had the ball, you just felt like he was going to have to be the main source of the scoring. He had 4 steals in that game as well, where he was able to jump passing lanes, but he's diving on the floor going after loose balls too. So he's not one of these guys that's, like, too cool to do the dirty work, even though he's also the sole source of offense for his team in this game. So I love the strength, I love the athleticism, I love the passing feel, I love the commitment to growing better as a defender, like, on a weekly basis. Even though his offense, like, his team's offense, wherever the secondary source of scoring is gonna come from, feels like it's different game by game, he's still, like, routinely trying to get other people involved. And again, season high in turnovers, he still was positive assist to turnover ratio in this game. So I just think that he is kind of underrated because he's not as tall as Malik and he's not as wide framed as, like, a Kingston Flemings. But again, he's strong, and the stuff that we were worried about him not being good at coming into the season, he's been good at those things, like, all season long.
Yeah, and I actually like the frame better than Kingston's. I think Acuff, as you mentioned, just a strong, stout frame. He's
Yep.
cut up, like he's not gonna shy away or feel out of place with the physicality of the NBA. And I think some of the knock on him is some of the rim finishing, as you mentioned, because of the athleticism concerns. But the athleticism is just a little bit different, and he's just not getting the credit for it. As you mentioned, the dunk attempt that he had, just the strength he has at the rim, the ability to absorb contact, and then also to use both hands at the rim.
Yep.
I want to see him continue to use touch finishes, footwork finishes around the rim. He had a nice floater in the game. So I want to just continue to see him do that and find different angles when he doesn't have to always get all the way to the rim. But the pull-up game is solid as well too. And probably two things I really wanted to touch on, but it kind of encapsulated into one, as you mentioned towards the end of the evaluation there with Acuff, is for me what's driving his stock and where he is right now, then both really the ceiling and the floor too, is what he's doing is both a shooter and a playmaker and floor general. His development as the point guard skills, the floor game, has allowed guys like Malik Thomas and DJ Wagner to really settle into their roles, for him to be able to take that over, facilitate, get guys involved, and then also do his thing as a scorer. Being able to find that balance between being a scorer and a playmaker for a point guard, especially when you can score the ball like how he can, as you mentioned, doesn't need screens, creates a lot of paint touches with and without screens. So being able to find that balance when you can go get a bucket and then you still have that burden of being the playmaker. I think he's been tremendous of doing that and growing, and on the collegiate level in a place like Arkansas and the SEC, one of the tougher leagues in the country, and the spotlight's going to be on you, especially under Cal. But the playmaking, I think that continues to be a lot of fun. I want to see more advanced playmaking from him. For me, it's mostly like I am touching the paint, which is great, of course. It's amazing. It's more kick out, drive and kick type of stuff. I've done my job, which is cool. As I said, it's great. But I want to see more manipulation, him running ball screens where he's reading the backside of the defense and things like that. He had one play, I think it was the Georgia game, direct line attack, comes down the lane into a nice hanging drop off finish wrap around pass, for the finish. So I want to see more things like that. I think he's really good at that, but it's more about continues to show the advanced stuff, because for me, I think that's where guys like Michael is ahead of him as a playmaker.
I think he's the
And
only one. I think he's really the only other guard that and I'm sorry to interrupt you there,
oh no,
Jam,
you're
but
fine. You're fine.
I think that he is really the only one that you can say clearly has like the advanced playmaking capability, because I don't think Kingston has a deeper passing bag. It might be like on par. And we talk all the time about LeBaron Philon and Christian Anderson, how most of their assists are similar to what you're discussing with Darius, where they're connective and they're, sometimes just even in two-man game, like driving and kicking out to the strong side. I feel like those types of looks are practiced, obviously in a practice setting.
Yeah.
But again, you're comparing him to, as a freshman, to those sophomores, and he's on par with another freshman in Kingston Flemings. And then Michael is really the only one that has like the clear passing stuff. But with Acuff, I just feel like he's doing things in areas that matter more for his position holistically. He's put together, in my opinion, a more complete resume in his one season so far in college than really anybody else in the areas that it matter. Like, I'm not going to sit here and tell you he's a better defender than Kingston Flemings. I don't believe that. Right. Um, I'm not going to be a fan to that degree, but I will say that Darius does have a block and a steal percentage over 1, and he's 4 steals in this game. He's shown multiple games where he'll get up and reject shots as well. He competes over the top of pick and roll. So I don't think that he is a subpar defender by any means. So again, in the areas that matter, I think that he's put together a more complete resume.
And he may have on a collegiate level, but I think moving forward and kind of projecting that matters, of course. But I still don't think the fact that he's put together right now a more complete season than someone like Michael who's battling injuries. I don't think
Yeah.
that's going to be a huge factor in being for me being like, hey, like, I because of the playmaking threshold and kind of just I would say he's a tier above at least as a playmaker than Darius Acuff, and that's kind of what I think is a huge difference is. But like I said, Acuff has made several significant strides. And I think he would not be in this conversation if it wasn't for the floor game improvements and what he's done as a point guard. And I think there's a lot of good connective stuff outside of the basic passes. He will do the hit ahead pass. He's had one of those for a Ewan Duncan in the game. Like he'll skip pass and do things like that. So I really do like that stuff about him. It's more become the more advanced playmaker out of ball screens, and he should have the opportunity to grow in the next level to do that.
Yeah, and this was one of the areas that we were concerned about him and Malik Thomas, like, going to the same team. Like, is he gonna be able to pass people open? Is he gonna be able to run then and organize? He's got an assist percentage of 33.9 and an assist to turnover ratio jam of 2.9, while simultaneously scoring in the 61st percentile at the rim. So again, I think he's got a very complete resume. He's got better on defense as the year has gone on and has looked good as a defender in the SEC. I see people in the chat where they're talking about these guards, and I think it's a fun conversation to have
Hmm.
for PG1. You know, you do have the injury with Michael, so he's a little bit out of sight, out of mind, which leaves the door open for a lot of these other guards to really like capture the imagination and the attentions of all these fans. I think that Acuff is probably out of everybody not named Michael has done the most to improve the perception of him preseason to now.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you make about the shooting? Obviously, shooting 41% from three on 5.4 3-point attempts per game. Do you think that's sustainable? I think he's still much more of a shot maker than shooter, although I've been pleasantly surprised by the overall shooting numbers, especially what he's been doing off the ball. And I think that helps with him be able to play with another guard, with other guards or a bigger playmaker and things like that. He's shooting 57.9% on unguarded catch and shoot three. Small sample size, just 19 attempts, but also shooting 42.6% on spot up threes on a larger sample size of 47 attempts. So I really do like what he's doing when he's off the ball, when he's spotting up and being a threat that way as well too.
Do you have the dribble jumper 3-point percentage in front of you right now?
I don't.
Okay, yeah, I would need to look at that, but it feels like it would be good. Just like if I'm going off of eye test by myself right now, I like the fact that he's doing pull-up threes, and I feel like that is more of the prerequisite coming into the season where if you're going to be like these sub 6'4" guards, you got to show that you could be a reliable shooter off of the bounce. And from what I've seen, like if I'm just going off of film and recall, he feels like he's done a lot better as a like off the bounce 3-point shooter this year. Like even in this game against Georgia, pulling the big man out, getting off of the dribble, and hitting a 3-point over Santos Surreal. The confidence that he has, like I do buy it because I've had an opportunity to watch him like warm up and stuff like that, and how professional he is. And I think that the shot is true. I don't know if it's like 41% true, but I do think that it's going to be respectable.
Yeah, I'm not too worried about him shooting the ball. I think the kind of combination of the production that he's showing, the comfort and the versatility, like I think he's going to always be a threat from three. And is looking at the numbers pulling up now, he's shooting 44.1% via synergy on off the dribble threes on 34 attempts. So it's a nice mix of what he's doing as a shooter that's projectable both on and off the ball and certainly helps his stock.
And I
And then
think the handle is important too because,
yeah,
talking to skills trainers, you have to if you're a guard, you have to be able to bring the ball up under pressure, and he is constantly pressured on this Razorback team. I'm sorry to interrupt you there, Jam.
oh no, you're good. I just say Appreciate Charlie in the chat. I'm just saying he likes Acuff and a lot of these small guards, but the risk is high. And it really is a high risk with smaller guards because
I
of
think
just
we could
kind of the
save.
skill.
I think that we could save this for the next guard that we're going to be talking about. I think it is a really good point, and I think that the most recent game that we had for our next prospect would be a really good time to bring it up. I have a lot of notes that I do want to share regarding the guard question on that, if that's okay, Jam.
Yeah, definitely just want to wrap this up on Acuff. And for him, I don't necessarily consider Acuff a small guard. Like maybe small if you really think about height, but as far as like stature, his frame, like he's not a small guard. Even if he's going to measure it like 6'2" or whatnot, like he's cut up, he's chiseled, he's physical, and I think that helps him obviously on both ends of the court offensively. You know, that strength, the burst that he has, the physicality as a driver, and then also defensively, the strength that he has helps him hold lines. And just you combine that with the active hands, the competitiveness, there are traits defensively.
And I'm so glad that you bring this up again. Arkansas has him listed at 6'3", 190. We've had some people within No Ceilings have eyes on him. They're saying that that's not too far off from what they're looking at in person, which is fantastic. And I'm so glad you brought up the fact that if he is an undersized guard, it's really only the height wise, but 6'3" is not, you know, a kiss of death in the NBA. There's a lot of starting guards that are at that height at a minimum. And then that 190 pounds, like seeing him in person, he is a powerfully built guard. He's got that low center of gravity. He's got good shoulders. He's not afraid to put his body into into a defender's body to create separation. And that's key, dude. Like you have to be physical at every position. And that's what I love about Acuff. Even going against Santos Surreal, you're not going to get a shot over him if you don't try. And even though he was blocked a couple of times, he did get some shots off over and around Somto during this game as well. You know, again, using the footwork, the same hand, same foot stuff, just to kind of keep the dribble cadence a little bit, in a change up status. That way you can't time his shot release. So it's more blockable if you're a defender. I loved what I've seen from him. And again, coming into the season, I was not an Acuff guy. I was much lower on him because I thought he was going to be a more selfish guard. But Jam, did you have anything else that you want to add on Acuff before we transition to our next segment?
No, let's transition to the next.
All right, we'll do that. So we're going to hit this break, and on the other side, we're going to hit our dedicated dives, where we're going to be talking about our first prospect, Ebuka Okorie. We'll be right back after this break. We are back here on the No Ceilings NBA Draft Show, here on the No Ceilings NBA YouTube channel. We are also on your podcast player of choice. Jam and I just got done breaking down our headline prospect, Darius Acuff Jr., the freshman guard out of Arkansas. A lot of good discussion on that. We're going to keep talking about guards. And earlier, Jam, I said that talking about the point guards and how this could impact the quality of the class. Going back to Charlie in the chat, he said that I like Acuff, but I like a lot of these small guards, but the risk is high. It was high in the game, the most recent game for Ebuka Okorie, Jam. The freshman guard out of Stanford, listed at 6'2", 185 pounds. He will be 19 years old on draft night as well. On the season, Jam, he's averaging 22.1 points per game, 3.5 rebounds, over 3 assists, 1.5 steals, 0.3 blocks per game, just under 1.5 turnovers and 1.5 fouls per game, with shooting splits of 44, 32, and 82. Jam, he's our first prospect on our dedicated dive segment. In our dedicated dives today are going to be brought to you by Rowan Kent's Scouting Trips. Jam, where do you want to start the conversation for Ebuka? Do you want it to be more individualized to him, or do you want to kind of talk about how his game against Duke is really kind of like the cautionary tale for falling in love with small guards?
We can mix. Let's just kind of start with the overall positives of the game. So I think we're good and bad. But I think you're absolutely right about that Duke game. So I definitely want to focus on that. But let's kind of just focus on the good of what he does, maybe the UNC game, and then there were still good moments in the Duke game for sure.
All right, yeah, let's go to the UNC game. I mean, the big thing, Jam, is that the sell if you like Ebuka Okorie, and I do. I had him even prior to this Duke game in my early second round range. This game didn't do anything to scare me away from that range. I think that if you're looking at him higher, in kind of like that mid to late first round range, I understand it. I'm just a little bit more leery, but he is an absolute bucket jam. I mean, if you look at the context of the Stanford team, he's doing a lot because he has to do a lot. And I think that he's shown a just a light out scoring package that he brings to the table.
Yeah, it's a really fun scoring package. I recently saw him just before that UNC explosion. Saw him down in Charlottesville getting a chance to play against UVA. And in that game, he scored 14 points, but it was 5 of 20 shooting. And then I really walked away from that game, not really too concerned about the shooting effort because a lot of the shots that he took were very good shots. They just didn't fall, and he lived in the paint. And that's just what he does. We talked about Darius Acuff being just a paint touch monster. The same thing with Ebuka Okorie. Like, it's just a wonderful combination of physicality, despite being a smaller guard, to really well put together frame. There's some mature muscle to it, some definition. I was excited to see how advanced his frame was for a smaller guard in person. But he's physical downhill. He'll hand fight you. He'll bump. He'll do all those type of things. And just the combination of the physicality, the speed, the quickness, the start and stop ability that he has is just really incredible. And he just lives in the paint with or without a screen. And he's able to use both hands finishing in this UNC game. He had a C split, which is very good at splitting the pick and roll, finish around Caleb Wilson contest there, just kind of a nice extension finish for a smaller guard. And floaters, runners, you kind of just saw the full gamut of his shot making ability, handoff three, pull up threes, all that stuff was there. And then for him to explode for 36 points, a freshman record for Stanford, he did that after such a poor shooting game with UVA against the UVA team. That's not the pack line defense. It's not Tony Bennett's defense. It's not that type of vaunted defense. But for him to bounce back in that type of way against UNC, absolutely love that type of component of his game, just to show you a little bit of the mentality that he has.
And he gives you a lot of activity on the defensive end too. He's one of these guards that want to quickly turn a pass, a lazily thrown pass. He wants to turn those into points on the other end as well. There's been a lot of fun with him. He is used on actions away from the ball a lot. Stanford wants to get him as clean as look as possible. So you'll see him run off of like some double drag action, or you'll see him on some flare sets and things like that for Stanford, to where he'll either have an opportunity to rise up for a 3-point shot, or he will attack. Even for his size, Jam, I'm glad you touched on this. He's willing to mix it up and get into the paint. So there's a lot of quality things that he does. But I want to touch on the Duke game where Stanford lost 80-50. It was a rough game for Ebuka, where he dropped 9 points. Duke really sold out on him, and I think this is going to be the recipe that a lot of teams are going to have when they go up against Stanford, where they literally dared anybody else on the team to attack them. And this game has me sort of conflicted on Ebuka, where on one hand, you could say that he has no help, which I led with, and I do think that there is some legitimacy to that. On the other hand, the NBA is full of like these Dame Sars, and Okorie is going to need to get more comfortable handling players like that, and players who are significantly better, frankly, than a Dame Sar. Duke did a really good job of making everything look hard for him. There was one of the 3 shots that he made was this sort of like flippy underneath the arm of Dame Sar after getting double teamed by him and Malik Brown. I don't know how many players, first off, Jam, that can get double teamed by Dame and Malik that could even think to put up a shot like that and finish. So the fact that he was able to do that is a huge credit to Ebuka Okorie. The second bucket that he made was the step back where you get into the hand fighting with him earlier. There was a little bit of an arm bar where he created separation with Dame Sar, and he was able to pull up and hit that step back three. And then the last shot came from shooting a passing lane and finishing in transition. Those were the only three field goals that he made um, against Duke. And Jam, this got me to think about him and some of the other guards in this class. Like, I wish I could see Ibuka in a separate context because he can erupt for these 36-point outing. But if you look at him and say like a Tyler Tanner, between the two of those, like I feel comfortable that Tyler Tanner can organize and run an offense. For a guard of Ibuka's size, I feel like you have to be able to do that. And I don't necessarily know if he can because that's not his role for the team, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's at the same time, it kind of has to be his role. I know they have I think it's Gessler, how you pronounce his name, but it's most if you're gonna be a primary ball handler, you have facilitation responsibilities to a sizable degree, you know. So, but I do think it's like it's a similar to Acuff in the sense that I don't think they're both advanced playmakers, but what Acuff is doing, he's been able to be more of a reliable facilitator, get guys, the team in sets, and be able to make plays more of his scoring gravity, more hit aheads, more connective stuff. So that's what I would like to see more from Okorie. Like a lot of the stuff as you mentioned, even though the 9 assists in the game against UNC, it was a lot of like I'm a kick out or it's just basic stuff through the offense. It wasn't like, hey, like pick and roll, pocket pass, like I'm threading needle, like pow, like it's right in there. I'm skipping it. It wasn't that type of stuff as a playmaker, and that's what I want to see come around from him for sure.
Yeah, if you look at the game against Duke, he really struggled to attack and get shots or passes up over the length. There was one time where he was trapped and he tried to deliver a cross court pass and that was picked off. There was another one where he was trapped on a handoff and he struggled to get the pass or to get past Patrick Ngongba and he was out of bounds because he just didn't have enough real estate to stay inside the line. And then the last turnover came from when he was driving into the paint and Cam Boozer just yoinked it right out of his hands. So the one assist that he had came where Agarwal came off of like this little fake ghost screen shallow cut. He was open because Duke was double teaming everything Okorie was doing. And that little pass from the top of the key to the right wing was just set up for an open three. That was his lone assist of the night. And not even to mention just like the facilitation questions that are gonna inherently come with Okorie, but the fact that he can't really shoot off of the bounce consistently. We talked about that just a moment ago with Darius Acuff and how he's shooting well over 40% off of the bounce. Ebuka Okorie is shooting barely over 26% on his dribble jumper threes. He missed two of them in the game against Duke, and he did hit the one, like I said, where he kind of armbarred Dame Sar, getting back outside to that right wing and hitting the three. He just doesn't look comfortable doing that. So it's
He looks
interesting because
comfortable to me though. Like
does he?
I think he just misses. Like I don't think it's a fact of him not being comfortable. I think it's maybe more reps and just finding the touch. But I didn't see anything like from him not wanting to shoot it, straining to shoot it, or anything like that, or shying away, from shooting the ball from step backs, pull ups. I think he's just much more of a shot maker than he is a pure shooter. So you're going to kind of go through those different lulls. But I just really with a guy like him and the shot making ability, multiple level shot maker, I think he's always going to be a threat pulling up from three and everything like that that teams are going to have to respect. And there's going to be moments, as I mentioned, there's going to be up and down with the shot maker like him. So um, I don't think it for me, I didn't see anything that's like he is scared to shoot or just uncomfortable shooting though.
I would say I agree with you on the scared, but the uncomfortable, I mean, it could just be I could just be having some recency stuff with the way that Dame clamped him, but I'm remembering one 3-pointer that he tried to get up over the top of him where he was off platform in such a way to where it just didn't look natural or comfortable from him, where he's kind of leaning to the left, but the right side of his body is like very kind of like straightened in a way. I'm having a hard time like articulating the way his body looked, but he was contorted in such a way to where it's like it was the only way that he could get the shot up overneath Dame, but it didn't look like a natural or a comfortable shooting form for
Yeah.
him. And he
I
did
would
have
chalk
to
it up
work
to more
really
of a
hard.
I would say I would just chalk that up real quick to just a bad shot as opposed to not being, like, comfortable, though.
I think that's fair. That's a good perspective to have, and I did, the night shift with, Tyler Metcalf yesterday, like, right after the game, and I think that's probably the hardest that Ebuka has had to work to get a shot, and again, we're talking about a guy who is New Hampshire's Gatorade Player of the Year, one of the
Yep.
best, kind of up and coming, pleasant surprises throughout the year, but again, Dame Sar, I I think he's like the perfect representation of the type of player that Ibuka is going to have to deal with at the next level. But I also want to give him room, Jam, to I think the point that you're wanting to drive home here. I want to give him room to learn from a game like that because if was in fact the hardest that he's ever had to work to get his shot up, we still have to leave the door open for him to learn from a moment like that, and not shut the door because he did struggle against one of the best teams in all of college basketball.
Yeah, absolutely, and Dami Sarr has been forgotten about because of, just the ups and downs he has as a shooter
Yep.
and, being in and out of the Duke lineup, but really reestablishing himself as one of the best perimeter defenders in the class. Like he's always had those tools. So it's good to see him do that, start with the Louisville game and Ryan Conwell, and then we see it really translate over. And then as you led with, I just completely agree that this type of game for Corey is what we want to see as evaluators. It's NBA size and length all over the floor for Duke.
Yep.
He has a ferocious long wing defending him, one of the best defenders in the conference and in the class as well too. And he just had, struggled with the whole team selling out on him. And just when you get to the NBA level, there's going to be some things that are different that we always have to keep in mind, kind of contextualize. It's going to be much more space on the NBA level for him to operate. He is not going, at least early in his career, it depends, how people feel about him and, project for him to be what type of level player. But when he gets to the league, at least initially, he's not going to be like, all right, you're number one, number two, number three, or even number
Yep.
four on the scouting report. So he's not going to have consistently a guy like Dame Sarr, although the size is always going to be there, but he would probably have more than likely have another guard on him. There's going to be other focuses on the team. So I think that's something good to keep in mind. But at the same time, if he wants to excel to kind of like the ceiling of what his game could potentially be, he's going to have to be able to show he can consistently score against the NBA size and length and when the game plan is a little bit more focused on him.
And the thing that I want to kind of call back to, I don't want to talk out of both sides of my mouth here. I don't think the scoring is the thing that I would be worried about moving forward for him, but I do feel like there has to be an answer to how do I get the best out of my teammates moving forward? Like you have to continue to play with this team at least for one season, right? So how am I going to get my teammates open? How am I going to cut down these cross court passes that I'm just trying to heave and throw and hope that it gets there and avoid that getting picked off. And plays like that, it's going to be the decision making in terms of how do I use my scoring and shooting gravity to how do I leverage that into getting the ball to teammates. And again, once you're double teamed, there's only so much you can do, but sometimes it's just hitting the open man and relocating, right? So there I want to see what the answer is going to be in terms of the decision making because again, truth be told, Jam, I it's not the scoring that worries me, but I would like to see him on a team. I was texting Nathan Grubel from our team, Draft Deeper himself, and we were talking about him and Tyler Tanner, and I said, well, I know that Tyler Tanner can run a sophisticated offense and he can pass people the ball and get people open and feed them while they're open. I don't necessarily know if I trust Ibuka to do that yet, but that's also not like really even a fault of himself. I would like to see him maybe in a Vanderbilt because Duke Miles is a senior and he's going to be gone after this year. Who knows with Tyler Tanner? I don't ever want to like alienate a fan base for here on the show, but it is what it is, man. Like I would like to see Ibuka in a fair context, and I think that right now it's fair for scoring, but I don't know if it's fair to evaluate his playmaking where he's at.
Yeah, definitely have to put that in context, like you're saying, and the playmaking will be that both that floor and ceiling raiser for him. But I think right now the role that I see him is going to be as that change of pace guard off the bench. That's going to be a spark plug scoring, the blur and transition, paint touches, and those type of things. And hopefully you continue to develop him and his point guard skills.
I can't get Aaron Brooks out of my head. I know he doesn't play the same way as like Rocket Legends, Aaron Brooks, but he's the player that I can't stop unseeing. I need to get a different comp so I can stop trying to make that connection because they're two completely different players, but I just feel like they're so shifty and they're constantly running. I feel like there's a little bit of that in this game. But
Yeah,
Antoine
definitely both
Willis,
shifty.
yeah, very, very much so. Antoine Willis in the chat, Jam, he asked, do you think the later Ibuka stays in college, his draft stock will either raise or increase since he's a good player but a smaller guard? Maybe he means like drop or increase the longer he stays in.
It's going to be up to, I think that playmaking is really that swing skill for him, or unless he becomes it's more of a lights out shooter, because kind of taking it back to our small guard conversation, the smaller you are, the shorter you are, the more of that skill threshold needs to be reached. You got to be really, really skilled. You have the athleticism, that's great and everything too. I think it's a key piece. Like Tyler Tanner has that athleticism with him, but he's also a very skilled guard. And a part of that, you have to be able to shoot the ball. And I think that's what's going to be the key for him. But he's someone that I'm expecting to stay in school. I think he probably will come and test and do all that stuff. But for me, if you aren't going to be a lottery guy, top 20, even pushing him, but really for me, lottery guy, stay in school, get paid more, continue to develop. And I think that's what NIL is going to push people to do. Unless, people are just like, hey, like I'm tired of school. I don't want to be in class anymore. I really want to be full-time pro. Then I get that. But if it's more comes to a money and development situation, more times than not, I think the best route for those who are going to be outside the lottery to stay in school like him.
Yeah, sometimes staying in school, even changing a change of scenery can lead to a revitalization in draft stock if it ever takes a hit. And that will
Hmm.
lead us to our next prospect here, Jam. Dailyn Swain, the junior forward out of Texas, who is listed at 6'8", 225 pounds. If he comes out this year, Jam, he will be 21 years old on draft night. On the season, he's averaging almost 16 points per game, over 7 rebounds per game, over 3 assists, over 1.5 steals per game, almost a half a block per game, over 2.5 turnovers per game, but under 2.5 fouls per game. Shooting splits, Jam, with 56, 26, and 75. His most recent game was against Texas A&M, where the Longhorns lost to the Aggies 74-70, a very close game. Jam, you wanted to bring up Dailyn Swain in this conversation, and I feel like he is a very interesting prospect to bring up for a couple of reasons. One of them, in my opinion, Jam, is, truth be told, like the lack of wing forwards within this class once you get outside the lottery range right now projected. Dailyn could be one of those later first round picks just based off of his measurements and his production. What are you thinking with Dailyn? Why'd you want to bring him to the table?
Yeah, it's just for me, he's going to be another interesting case study and just data point of a wing who does pretty much all the things that you want except for shoot. So it's
Yeah.
always interesting what those type of prospects do. Like, what are the thresholds for the rest of their skills if the shooting does not fall their way, doesn't swing their way. And for someone this year, Dailyn shooting 26.2% from three. Not ideal, of course, but at least she's shooting
Career high, if I'm not mistaken, too, by the way. Yeah.
yeah, and then career high in attempts as well. So 2.3 attempts per game, so that's, certainly a positive. And what he does at the free throw line, 75% at the line, just under 5 attempts per game, nearly under 80% for his career at 79%. So there's some touch flashes there. Um, and the jumper looks projectable. It doesn't look bad at all. But for whatever reason, if it's a confidence thing or a reps thing, it just has not worked out for him to be a reliable shooter. But he's a ferocious slasher, transition player. Good, not great handle, but really falls into that pass, dribble, defend, being that versatile defender, a guy that can switch, be a defensive disruptor. Great anticipation skills in passing lanes with the length and the anticipation skills, quick hands on the ball, all those type of things. And I think probably his greatest asset offensively is that combination of size and passing. Do some things as a handler, short roll, probably his best in transition, skips and those things. He had just a beautiful one-hand bounce pass to, I believe, Vokakaitis is how you pronounce his name,
Yeah.
Vokakitis,
Vocatitis.
and for a
I
nice
love
slam.
Vocatitis. That
Yeah, I
dude is
know you're a big
he's a
fan.
sledgehammer. He's going to be on my board next year coming in. I love Vocatitis.
Absolutely should be in everybody's. And just to have a Swiss Army knife like Dailyn Swain and everything that he can bring for a team outside shooting, it's going to just be a very interesting test. And I kind of just wrap it up with this. He's really been this versatile piece, this stat sheet stuffer, if I can get it out.
Bless you.
Yeah. Since high school, that's what he's done. He did the same thing with Xavier in his 2 years, even as playing limited time as a freshman. And then right now at Texas, he leads them in points, rebounds,
Yep.
assists, and steals. This is what he does. And if a team believed in the shooting enough, it's hard to not put him in the lottery, at least top 20. I think he's probably going to go in the first round, late in that first round. Right now, I have him that early second round. So we'll see what kind of happens, but it's going to come down to really that shooting, or if a team or if evaluators really feel that the rest of the parts are reaching that threshold and kind of compensate for the lack of shooting.
Jam, I feel like every time we say that if someone's got a year of college eligibility, that they're probably coming back, like someone's going to get drafted in the late first round. Like someone's got to be there. And there
Yeah.
might be someone who thinks that, okay, like this is the year where it's open for me. I value the opportunity of getting into the league, proving myself and trying to work for that first year contract, DeAndre Ayton style. So there are people who are going to have to get drafted in the late first round. And I don't know if it's always ever been seniors only who are late first round draft picks, but Dailyn could be that dude, because I think you have to consider what I led with at the top is that there's some positional scarcity for him this
Mhm.
year. And if everyone comes back, he's going to have to deal with those same people again next year. So he might be getting out ahead of the curve, kind of like Ty Simpson coming out from Alabama this year in the NFL draft, considering how deep the quarterback class is next year. So we
It's a
might
good
see
call.
Dailyn. We might see Dailyn come out this year, right? So some things that I like, he's obviously athletic. He has some crazy hang time stuff where he can contort and even do old school MJ stuff and like switch hand finish while he's still hanging up in the air. He's got a nice dribble pull up that he likes to get to in that AJ DeBoncer range that AJ likes to get to as well. You mentioned that you like the shot and it looks good. It's kind of like a low trajectory, and it is like a kind of over the strong side shoulder instead of like a release out in front. So
Mhm.
there's some touch stuff that he does to where I don't know if you can adjust maybe the mechanics of that jumper and get more out of it with him. But I'm not a fan of the trajectory. Like even the release point doesn't necessarily bother me, but you can't be low and off to the side. You know what I mean? Like that's what I feel like he's kind of dealing with here. But he does have some great anticipation on his cuts, which oddly enough, per synergy only makes up about 7% of his offense. But once he does it, he ranks in the 80th percentile. Like he's such an instinctive cutter. I feel like he does a really good job of timing when to move in concert with the ball handler as well. In terms of his ball handling, I like that his handle has gotten him to the point to where he can go to a crossover and attack the middle of the paint. If he's feeling a lot of pressure in the middle, he's got enough of a handle to where he can escape route out to the wing and kick the ball out to somebody else. And he does love to put pressure on the rim. Free throw rate of 49.4. The handle is decent enough for him to get to these scoring opportunities in Texas, but I don't know if it's good enough to like necessarily be like an offensive creator for himself and others, but that's okay
Yeah.
because I feel like to your point, his offense is going to come from attacking the offensive glass, which he is also really good at, and moving off of others as well. The passing kind of varies because he had one pass where he tried to pass over the top of A&M and it went right into the hands of the defender. But then he has one where where he drives and attacks, the defense collapses around him and he whips this like bullet of a pass, like this overhead two-handed pass to the corner, and his teammate just misses a wide open look. So there are moments where he is capable of creating for others. Defensively, I love the fact that he covers a lot of ground and he's an active guy, a great athlete, very strong for his size, even though he's a little bit thin. I'm looking at role projection though, Jam, and I'm like, is it a little bit of Ryan Dunn? And then I do a little bit of research, and Dunn was bigger than Swain. And Dunn also had, I loved Ryan Dunn, by the way, too, Jam, coming out. He was so fun to watch. Dunn had a 10.4 block percentage. Um, and I think Dailyn could do that if he wasn't taking on so much of an offensive role like he is for Texas. So there's a little bit of give and take in that regard.
Hmm.
He is very fun. I wouldn't be surprised if he did enough to work his way up into the late first round range. I'm like you though, I do have him in that kind of like early to mid second round range.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up Ryan Dunn in the defense. I think Ryan Dunn is a much better defender than Swain. I think for Swain and his profile, a guy that Swiss Army knife does pretty much everything on the floor that you want, defensive playmaking, just can't shoot. What I'm hoping and kind of looking for him and that type of profile are really a couple of things to kind of compensate him and to really get me there, really believing in what he can do at the NBA level. Especially, I know some people like him as a lottery guy, top 20 guy. Is I feel like he has to be the more better on ball and versatile defender. So, like, do you trust him defending point guards? Like, if it's like, hey, like I need you to take this point guard matchup, is that something that you feel comfortable with him doing? Or is it just more so like, all right, I love you being able to step out and defend in space on switches and do those type of things and be versatile, but do you like him as an on-ball defender for those type of guards?
I don't based off of the film in Texas. I would
Yeah,
have to go back and watch the Xavier stuff to see what he was doing, selling out more
that's fair.
holistically on the defensive end because
Mhm.
it's different. It was the same thing with Jalen Tyson. You know, whenever he was playing at Cal, a lot of people were like, and look at the defense. I'm like, I looked at the defense at Texas Tech, and this dude was a freaking nightmare. And then he goes to California to show that he can do a lot more on the ball stuff at California. And some of that defensive stuff kind of went away. So I would need to refresh myself with Dalen's Xavier film to see if there is evidence to support that. But if I'm just looking at Texas, he's got the length, he's very athletic, he covers a lot of ground. I wouldn't rule it out, but based on Texas in of itself, I don't feel confident projecting him out
Yeah.
to be like a point guard, point of attack defender. But I need to go back and look and see what the Xavier film says.
Yeah, that's very, very fair. And I think because the usage won't be as high as it is now, you will get a chance for him to be like, all right, let's focus a little bit more on the defensive end and kind of being more this terror and hopefully they can defend some ones and twos. Because if he can defend ones and twos, and that's something to trust, that definitely just takes what he can do and that ceiling on both the floor to another level where you feel a lot more comfortable about just the defensive monster that he can and really may need to be without the shooting. And then outside of the
Well, can you
defense,
I'm sorry, before we move on past the defense, but I wanna ask you, Jam, like, how do you feel about his ability to be able to do that?
I just want to see a little bit more. At the end of the day, I like the tools. I'm just not quite sure if the mentality is there. But once you get to the NBA, like things change. That's going to be more of a that's going to be more of a thing that NBA teams are going to have to answer when they bring him in for interviews, finding out what the tangibles are, the mindset. That's something that he feels like he can and is able to do. And I want to give him a chance to do that. I would, like you said, I want to see just a little bit more tape. We'll have to go back and Xavier stuff to where he didn't have, especially the freshman year. I know it was smaller minutes, I think like 13 minutes, something like that. But he was playing of a lesser role, lesser usage. So it was more like, I need you to defend and do more of those ancillary things.
And Xavier, they put out dudes that have to defend at certain,
Yeah,
to some degree. Ryan Conwell was very much so lauded for his defensive ability at Xavier. Now he's like the leading scorer at Louisville. So you see, he's still a really good defender at the college level at
yeah.
Louisville. Had to kind of rein it back a little bit and save himself a little bit of energy for the offensive burden that he has to take on for the Cardinals now. But Jam, you were about to mention before I so rudely interrupted you. You said
No
outside the
worries.
defense.
Yeah. Outside of the defense, the other thing for his profile that I would like to see to kind of warrant that lottery consideration is the playmaking, more being more so of like a primary or secondary playmaker that you really can trust.
Yeah.
That's someone that's gonna, we talked about the advanced pick and roll stuff. Can he read the back line? Can you do that? He doesn't have to be like Avdalis or Yegor Demin. I probably butchered the name of so many different pronunciations that we got to the
Joman.
cycle for Joman.
Yeah.
Um, I wish he was that type of level playmaker, or maybe somewhere close. Maybe it had to be that tier. I know it's asking for a lot, but somewhere below, if there was just more trust in him being able to run and facilitate an offense, be more of that point forward. If I had more belief in that, I think that would be a huge compensator for me. But that's not something that I'm seeing right now. I think it's more so second side type of guy, attack closeouts to the extent that he will get closeouts with the shooting and everything like that. It's more of a connected passing.
I see that. Maybe more along the lines of what you might be thinking is kind of prime Chris Middleton type of a playmaker where he could come in and do a little bit of passing and stuff as well when he was in his heyday at Milwaukee. Jam, I think it's the thing everybody hates to talk about all the time, but to me, just it comes down to the shooting. I think that
Hmm.
at his size in particular, like he's not a top tier freak to kinda overlook the shooting concerns that come with him.
Yeah.
To your point, the passing isn't advanced to overlook the shooting concerns with him. I would just need something to be elite to bypass the shooting stuff just outright, and I feel like we kind of collectively as a community each year say, "I don't care that this guy can't shoot." But, like, you kinda have to, it's boring to talk about all the time, so sometimes we just avoid it, but with Dailyn, I just I can't really take him super duper serious when he's shooting a career best right now as a junior in college, and it's under 27% from deep.
Yeah, the rest of the stuff is just gonna have to reach whatever that threshold that evaluators have, personally, that's gonna kind of overcompensate for that stuff. And I think a lot of people are just, which I get, it's just
Yeah,
you're betting on that combination of size, feel, kind of defensive playmaking, and athleticism. Can I throw two names out there
please.
to you? Just have to preface with this, not someone that believes in one-to-one comps, more of a comp blend, but a couple of names that popped up for me. I'm just kind of watching the tape, over the past few years and refresh myself what he's doing this year. Is Jared Vanderbilt and Najee Marshall. Personally, I think those are two bet. I rate them better than him, especially at this stage. And I would kind of, even going back in time, just really trusting them more than Swain at this point. But Vanderbilt was a guy, I know people see him now as just more kind of 3 and D. Well, he's trying to be 3 and D, struggling to
Yeah.
shoot. But there was a lot of playmaking involved when you're talking about Vanderbilt when he's at Kentucky in the grassroots level. Probably shown a lot more of the total package. He wasn't hurt at Kentucky, but I think he does a lot of similar things to Swain. A guy that can handle the ball, help you play, make you do some things, good athlete, transition, defend multiple positions. And then I think Najee Marshall did some similar things, struggled to shoot, but I did trust the shot making and the confidence more from Najee Marshall and the overall playmaking than I do Swain. But I think Swain has the advantage defensively, though.
I think where he kind of falls short compared to both of those guys was just like the physical component. You know, he's not as big as those guys were when they came out. You know what I
I
mean?
think he's
So
close to Najee Marshall. I think those are.
I would have to your point, I think the closest one would be Najee, but I don't remember Najee appearing to be as skinny. You know what I'm saying? Like I for Dailyn, he is a little bit more thin, and I don't know. I think he's more wingy right now than forwardy compared to those guys. So I would say the physical component leans to their direction, but to your point, like the defensive tools and acumen are there. And I don't want to speak out of turn here. I would really want to go back to the Xavier film to be confident in projecting the defensive stuff because just on Texas film alone, like he's solid, but he's not really doing he's not doing anything defensively now to make me ignore the 3-point shooting stuff right now. And I don't think he's
Exactly.
as big and as strong to even Vanderbilt has struggled to find consistent playing time. Najee, depending on the team that he's playing for, has had a hard time finding consistent playing time. And this reminds me a little bit of, remember Harrison Ingram coming over from Stanford to North Carolina, and he had good passing feel, and he was a good rebounder, and he had a good size. The shot really needed to come around. When he went to North Carolina, the shot came around, and he was a second-round draft pick by the San Antonio Spurs, if memory serves me correctly. And he's still struggling to find his footing in the NBA. So I kind of want to go back and look at those, like if they can only shoot at success stories in college and then they get drafted, like where are they now type thing.
Yeah.
And I think that would kind of inform my decision making a little bit more. I still feel like I got some homework to do on the Xavier film. That is going on my short watch list because I just want to be able to speak. I want to have a more informed take on projecting him holistically.
Yeah, definitely. I see Norm Rad asked the question, Dailyn Swain or Lawan Watts, who's the better prospect? On my board, I had Lawan ahead, but I think in the next one, I will have Swain ahead.
Yeah, I have had Lawan higher historically up until this last big board that I did. I just feel like Lawan feels more comfortable with the ball in his hand. And even though Dailyn has done more on ball stuff, I feel more confident in the off ball stuff translating. I feel the defensive and the defensiveness and the athleticism from Dailyn translating a lot more than kind of the bully ball nature that Lawan offers. And you're talking to two dudes who were super duper high on Lawan coming in.
And Lawan does have the shooting advantage, though, that's be able to space
True.
the floor and still play make. So, in team fit, also big picture in that too. So it's going to be very interesting between those two for sure.
For sure, for sure. All right. So, Jam, we're going to close out there on our dedicated dives, hit this last break, and then we're coming to everybody's favorite segment, the sicko section. And we're going to be talking about a guy who's been making his rounds on social media. It seems like the hive mind of draft Twitter. Once somebody thinks of a player, everybody starts thinking about him. We're going to be talking about Alan Graves on the other side of this conversation. Just hang tight. We'll be right back. All right, we are back here on the No Ceilings NBA Draft Show, here on the No Ceilings NBA YouTube channel. We're also on your podcast player of choice. Jam and I have had a lot of fun today breaking down some interesting prospects. We're not here talking about the top 4 within this draft. Heck, we haven't probably even been talking about a lot of people's top 7, but we did discuss Darius Acuff Jr., my PG1. We did talk about Ebuka Okorie and some of the good things that he's been doing on the season, but also maybe some cautionary stuff that Duke film unveiled a little bit. And then we just wrapped up talking about Dailyn Swain, the Musketeer turned Longhorn, and how he could project into the NBA. Jam, we're here on everybody's favorite segment, the Sicko section. And today's Sicko section is brought to you by Nathan Grubel's Morning Dunk. We're going to be talking about Allen Graves, who is the redshirt freshman forward out of Santa Clara, listed at 6'9", 225 pounds. Should he come out this year, Jam, he will be 20 years old on draft night. On the year, he is averaging about 10 points per game, just under 7 rebounds per game, just under 2 assists per game, 2 steals, 1 block, less than 1 turnover per game, about 3.5 fouls per game, with shooting splits of 48, 40, and 69. Jam, Allen Graves, it just seems like I mentioned at the top, once one person starts thinking and talking about a guy on draft Twitter, the community is so much more advanced now than it's ever been. We are all in sync on sleeper prospects. I like Allen Graves a lot. We're talking about Louisiana's former Mr. Gatorade Player of the Year. More indications and more backing to what we were talking about earlier in the show. What's your conversation, or excuse me, what's your viewing pleasure been like watching Allen Graves?
Yeah, I like what I saw, so far. Redshirt freshman getting a chance to play this year and taking advantage of that opportunity. Stretch big, more 4 than 5, I think long term. Because I'm just concerned about the athleticism on both ends. But a guy that picks and pops, can attack closeouts, things are functional enough handle, repeatable shooting mechanics, confident shooter, just a floor spacing big. And what I am concerned about defensively with the athleticism, I do like what he does with his activity. Like, he'll rotate, he'll be in good position as the helper, active with his hands. He'll try to go vertical. Not much lift when he gets there, but he is there and he is active. I think he's a good guy to track as a stretch big, but ultimately I do have like long-term concerns because the athleticism and what exactly he does as a defender, despite the solid stock numbers that he's putting together, 3 stocks per game.
So I have a lot that I want to say, but a thought that's been rolling around in my head all day long in preparation for the show. I want to rip the band-aid off, and I want to get your opinion on this take. In the spirit of what you said earlier, and there's a comp blend here. This is not one for one, but there are shades of. There's like this player reminds you of. There's a little bit, and please nobody think less of me here. There's a little bit of like middle class man's Cam Boozer going on here, in my
Oh,
opinion,
wow.
with Allen Graves.
That's
And
very, very strong. Even middle class, that's strong. I'm happy and excited to hear the case, though.
well, the shot reminds me of Cam's, like just the form and the ability to set screens and get to the perimeter and get his shot off. It's not like the quickest release, but he's confident in it, and he's shooting 40% from deep. He shows some bully ball aspect to his game, to where you get him in the ball in the mid and the low post, and he'll put his butt into somebody, and he can pass out of the post. He can score out of the post. He can make a couple dribbles and score out of the post. He attacks the glass with crazy tenacity. If you look at this, like, his offensive rebound percentage is almost at 15, Jam, and his defensive rebounding percentage is at 21. And then defensively, Cam comes with some concerns. He's not the most overtly athletic defender either, but he gets by, and he is very good by playing defense with his brain and positioning and knowing where to be. You know what I'm saying? Like, he will also get vertical to challenge shots. He will make reads from the weak side and make plays. I think that you get a lot of the same things, just not at the same level right now that we're getting with a Cam Boozer. I just think that he is versatile in the same ways that Cam is, just obviously not like on that same scale. Do you kind of see where I'm not saying he, and again, that's why I led with like comp lens, maybe there's shades of, but like even the shooting motion looks a little bit like Cam's, and just the ways that he can attack from multiple areas of the floor and still give you strong defensive playmaking, like reminds me a little bit of Cam Boozer.
Yeah, I don't know if I just can't get that far, even like middle class. There i- there is some versatility to his game, but I think he's much more of a guy that's looking to stretch, and I just don't see the same type of, or even the realm of the combination of power, footwork, and kind of just the processing that Cam has. I'm trying to think of a name that I would kind of equate him to, but I think just the Cam name is just kind of throwing me off a little bit with
Yeah,
that.
not trying to say again one for
Yeah, yeah.
one, but like I think he offers like a similar playing style to his team, I guess is like what I'm trying to get at,
Okay,
right? Where
okay.
where he can be effective from the same areas of the floor for his team as what Cam does for Duke, with the exception of like the propensity to be a hub at the same level. But there, like I said, just some things that I seen that's like, okay, that reminds me a little bit of him. But Allen Graves, a great player in his own right, was the Louisiana Mr. Gatorade's player of the year, just like Cam was for the state of Florida, right? I just like him a lot, dude. Like the fact that he can shoot with touch and confidence consistently, the fact that he can attack, the defense from the paint. He does give you some good playmaking. He does give you some good defensive stuff. And even he was in my sleeper prospects of the week over
Hmm.
at NoCeilingsNBA.com. I wrote about this in great detail if you want to see more written words on him from me, but I don't think he's a poor athlete, but he's just not like overtly plus. I think he's just like a capable basketball player, and I think that he just shows great intelligence. Like the way he'll make digs at the ball reminds me of what Cam does as well, where he will just rip the ball away before the shot even gets remotely close to getting off and stuff like that. And you mentioned the vertical nature that he plays defensively too. That's not to say that he's getting up and rejecting shots, but he will be like he'll present himself to be a tall object that his man has to shoot over. And I love a lot of what I see from him. He's very versatile. I think that he could be a very interesting long term prospect.
Yeah, one thing I'll add about it is I'm always a sucker for just like basketball families and basketball bloodlines. So he did have a brother that played at LSU and then a sister that played at Auburn as well. So coming from a basketball family, something I always love to see.
Can't run away from DNA. We say it all the time, Jam. All right, so we'll close the books there on Allen Graves, Jam. You brought to the table one Baba Miller. He is a senior forward, big man, kind of can do a little bit of everything in the front court for the Cincinnati Bearcats, listed at 6'11", 225 pounds. He will be 22 years old on draft night. Jam, he's averaging 13 points per game, almost 11 boards, over 3 assists, block and a half per game, over 1 steal per game, 2 turnovers per game, less than 2 fouls per game for the amount of defensive output and production that you're getting from him. That's fantastic. Shooting 57, 11, and 58 from the floor. Most recent game came against Iowa State, where his team beat the Cyclones, which is a huge accomplishment in college basketball. Cincinnati 179-70. Jam, you wanted to talk about Baba Miller. Please enlighten us as to why.
Yeah, Baba Miller, 91, that's new to the draft scene, going back to his time at Florida State, even during that time, had some interest and some expectations that he possibly could be a one and done. That obviously did not work out for him. But he spent 2 years at FSU before spending last year at Florida Atlantic and finally having one of his better years of his collegiate career, arguably his best year of his collegiate time here at Cincinnati.
And
And
Jam, real quick, the infamous, family was um a flight was covered, I believe, when he was at Florida State, and he was ineligible for a good
Mhm.
portion of his freshman season before NIL was really kicking off. Like, this is what Baba had to deal with coming over internationally after having some acclaim, I believe in Spain, if I'm not
Yep.
mistaken, before
Yep.
he came over to the college ranks.
Yeah, and I think a lot of his profile is still what's attractive. It's a big man, play the 4 and the 5, but movement skills, mobile, functional handle, and the playmaking is just what's really, really fun about a big man like him with his movement skills and size. Like, he can play short roll, and there was a couple of possessions, especially against Iowa State. He shows the ability to go to that skip pass. He's a fantastic skip pass thrower. He did one out of the double team, post double to the opposite corner. They ended up being for 3 against Iowa State. And had another one drop off out of a post double as well too. And he's just someone that teams can rely upon to run DHOs, that short roll, a lot of the modern action as a playmaker, attack closeouts as well too. Thrive as a play finish in the Colorado game. Couple big dunks, one off a cut. When he does want to cut, he's shown good timing and forced to do so with the athleticism. Also caught a nice lob pass in the half court for a slam, just showing that athleticism, what he can do as a play finisher. And I think really the thing for me that made me want to talk about him, and I'm seeing a little bit different this year, is just the improvements in physicality and to do a little bit more
Yes.
of the grimy big man work. And I think that's the difference this year and why I think he deserves more conversation, about him being as a potential top 60 guy and someone that's draftable. As you mentioned, 10.8 rebounds per game. That is a career high. He's been just a volume rebounder. It was 12 rebounds against Iowa State, 11 against Colorado this week as well. He's had a 21 rebound game against Lipscomb, 14 against Alabama State, 17 against Xavier. So he's been consistently on the glass defensively and offensively, setting better screens. So I really am liking all those type of things that Bob is doing. The one thing, unfortunately, is just the regression in shooting. Shooting
Yeah.
11.1% from 3 on 1.7 3-point attempts per game. Just taking a step back from what he has shown last year. And last year, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, he was at, so I can pull it back up real quick. But yeah, he was at 34.2% shooting 3.4 attempts per game from 3. So obviously it wasn't something where it's super high volume where he's this lights out shooter, but it was enough to where, like, you saw that he was comfortable shooting and he was going to be a threat, at least something that teams are going to have to worry about. They won't necessarily leave him open, but it's enough for teams to think twice about, for him to be able to attack closeouts and open up the rest of his game. So the shot, I still think mechanically it looks pretty good for the most part. There's still some good touch flash that he's shown. I don't think he's ever going to be like this guy who is going to shoot upper 30s, but if he can get somewhere into low 30s with decent volume, hit the open shots, I think that's going to be huge for his stock ultimately. And hopefully that's something he can do once we get to the pre-draft season.
Yeah, I'm glad you touched on the improvement in physicality. I would encourage anybody who just wants to see what makes Baba different this year than when he used to, like, just look and see what he looked like as a freshman at Florida State compared to
Mhm.
now. Like, just watching him play this year, it's like, that's Baba Miller. Like, that dude is huge now. Like, not just huge as in tall, because he's always been tall, but he is filled out, and he is
Yeah.
a very more he's more physically imposing now, to the point to where, like, he can back down Josh Jefferson and finish through contact. Now, he's got inches on Jefferson, but Jefferson is widely regarded as one of the best kind of like one-on-one front court defenders that you'll find in college basketball. And Baba, even though he's not the most polished of offensive player, there's some physicality, like rawness to his game now, this newfound strength that he has, that he could take a guy like Jefferson to the block and do some work over the top of him. But the shooting touch, like, it translates to multiple areas of the game, Jam, where it's like the free throw percentage is one. But then there was one play against Iowa State where he got this pass in the kind of like shallow corner, and he just rushed this like push shot over the top of the daunting Milan Momcilovic, the defensive ace that he is. And even Momcilovic's presence like kind of forced Baba to like rush that shot and it not fall. I feel like the handle is still good and but not advanced. But for his position, as long as you trust him to make a couple dribbles and make a decision, like that's found
Exactly.
money. You know
Yep.
what I mean? And to your point, the gorgeous whip pass that he threw to the opposite corner, he looked like a point guard. It reminded me of like the Jason Williams, Gilbert Arenas, that little spin pass type where they would just like put a little extra sauce on it. It was similar to that, except that guy is like 7 feet tall doing stuff like that. It's just ridiculous. The ability to handle pressure at his position is also another thing to where if you want to send help, good luck because he's going to find somebody. He's got the height of eye advantage on you as well. But again, the defense is the thing of beauty when it comes to him, and I feel like that's always been kind of the secret sauce against Iowa State. He blocked a Killian Torre. He picked
Yeah,
off a
that
loose
3-point.
ball.
Yep.
Yeah, he blocked the 3-point shot, picked off the handle from Joshua Jefferson, and then he blocked Dominic Nelson on a shot as well. So block percentage of 6, steal percentage of 2. Baba is just at some point NBA teams are going to be like, okay, 7 feet tall, can dribble, can pass, can rebound, can defend at this level. We're gonna give you looks. You know what I mean? Like Kai Jones got as many looks as it took for teams to figure out that whatever. Marvin Bagley is still playing in the league right now. Um, Jonathan Isaacs has been on a contract for the Orlando Magic for the past decade, even though the minutes have been spotty. There's going to be looks given. Dom Barlow has been on multiple teams now and has a little bit found success with the Philadelphia 76ers. If you have length and you can defend like this and you can rebound and you're strong now like Baba is, you're going to get teams are going to give you as many looks as it takes to find out that there's absolutely nothing there. And I think that there could be something there with Baba.
Yeah, there's still plenty of tools there, a lot of things that translate to the NBA level and, right away, modern game as well too, outside the shooting. And the last thing I'll bring up about the defense, as you already mentioned, just defensive playmaker, the mobility to be able to defend in space, can switch. And then when I say switch, there aren't really too many bigs where they're truly switchable, where like you expect them to get a stop. For me, when I talk about guys being switchable on bigs, it's can you make the guard work to get the shot? They may hit it and they may go around you. They may hit a step back pull, but did you make them work to do it? That's what I'm looking for a switchable big, and I think that's something that he can do. And then to your point about the strength and just continue the defense, is one play that I love from him in the game against Iowa State against Joshua Jefferson. Takes the direct line drive on Jefferson, absorbs the bump right in the chest. Falls back a little bit, but he's still in it. But he's right there, stays vertical, hands up, and forced to miss. So I just love the utilization of leveraging, of his tools to increase strength, the physicality, and just being long and using your size. And I think that's going to continue to be something that he used to his advantage.
Yeah, I have a hard time imagining that he's not going to get multiple looks in the NBA. Jam, I'm hoping that he's going to be in Portsmouth when we are. That would be a lot of fun to see. Hopefully, we could get a
Fingers
Baba Miller
crossed.
there. Fingers
Yeah.
crossed. All right, so Jam, that'll wrap up our sleeper section, which means that the show's over, my man. But before we get out of here, we want to give you an opportunity to share some of the great work that you've been putting out. You've been attending a lot of games. You've been putting out good work on some sleeper prospects that we're not talking about today. So, floor is yours to share the stuff that you have going on behind the scenes, boss.
Appreciate that. Just wrote about South Florida's Isaiah Nelson, who's having a phenomenal year transferring up. You always love when the transferring up works.
Arkansas State, right? Red
Yeah,
Wolves.
from
My
Arkansas
man.
State, the Red Wolves. So he's someone, speak of Portsmouth, I think he's going to be a prime candidate for Portsmouth. So I'm looking forward to that and see how that plays out for him. Also, as you mentioned, going to a bunch of games per usual. I have Jam's Journal that'll be coming out, just kind of recapping a lot of those in-person perspectives. One will be coming out, I think I'm scheduled for either Thursday or Friday. I'm pretty sure Thursday, but that'll be on my most recent trip going to see UConn and Georgetown battle. Was a very fun game. And then tomorrow, well, I guess Monday, anytime you'll be hearing this, I'll be on MLK Day going to go see the Battle of the Georges between George Washington, George Mason, a nice A-10 matchup against two of the better teams in the A-10 and two of the top players of the A-10, and Corey Mincy for George Mason, and then Rafael Castro, no ceilings favorite for George Washington, who really, I think, has what it takes to be a draftable prospect. So looking forward to getting out to that game and also just getting out the recap for it.
Can't wait to read that, dude. Rafael Castro, you can't feed us enough Rafael Castro content over at No Ceilings. But Jam, you've been doing some great work, dude. Really, really pleased with the whole team over at NoCeilingsNBA.com. A lot of we're hitting almost every day of the week now. Like we are work. It's not being asked of us, but we're just a bunch of sickos. We got a lot of things that we're watching, and we want to give words to our audience on, right? So please, if you're not subscribed, NoCeilingsNBA.com, be a plus member, because you're going to get access to more and more there. Dirty Dancer in the chat says, OMG, what a football game. Please drop the score, because my Rams are playing right now, and I'm one.
Come on, Bears. I'm sorry, Steven, but I cannot have the Seahawks or Rams win.
You can. It'll be all right. As for myself, this past week I had the it's an overtime. All right, so 5 mid-season updates dropped, where I gave updated thoughts on the draft class as a whole. This past weekend I dropped a week 10 sleepers of the week. This upcoming Thursday I'm going to have a piece on Amari Allen, so I can't wait to do that. One of my favorite plays, or one of my favorite players of this draft class. So Jam, let's get out of here, man. For Jam, for myself, for the rest of the No Ceilings team, this has been a fun show. We are the Draft Sickos, and please like, share, subscribe, rate, and review, all that fun stuff. And next week, Jam, do you want to drop a little name here on the show who we're going to be having to get the people excited?
I'll let you do the honors.
Yeah, Mr. Finn, Draft Finn on Twitter from the Double Bonus podcast will be on the show. So keep an eye out for that. And I'm excited, because a little bit different perspective than what we normally have here on the show. And we all want to get better, and we all want to learn. And Finn's going to help us do that. So stay tuned for that. But again, for No Ceilings, I'm going to get off of here and go watch the Rams, and we will catch up with y'all next time. Much love, y'all.